talking about market architecture. What does it mean? It simply means, the trading platform, market infrastructure, technology, participants, the stakeholders, the products, and of course, around it is the regulatory framework. You have the regulator on top, being the helicopter for the market. Because without the regulator, there will be a disorganization of exactly what happens in the market. For every market, there needs to be somebody, a sheriff, who is in charge of the market, being able to coordinate whatever happens in every part or sector of the market, including the products and services that are being offered. Especially in these days of new innovations, and you find a lot of things happening, you ask yourself, why are these things happening the way they are happening? Is there something we can do to be able to deal with whatever consequences these products that are coming into the market, will finally bring up to even the investors? A lot of people are investing in a lot of products that they do not know anything about. The only suitable institution to be able that is able to guide any of these investments is no other person than the regulator. And that's why you have the regulator at the apex. Under the regulator, you have the exchanges, you have the market participants, right? You have the products and the trading systems. Then under other market infrastructures, of course, you have the CSDs, the CCPs, and the trade repositories. Then clearly, you have the trade groups that has members who are part of this other part of the infrastructure and participants within those trade groups. So when we talk about the market architecture, we are not saying anything that is strange or is not known to all of us. What we're just saying is that who are those that are participants in this market? Who are those that make up the market? And how do they relate with each other? What is the interconnectivity between all of these participants in the market to make up the entire ecosystem? Because without a functioning ecosystem, definitely there will be gaps. And those gaps are what causes, regulatory arbitrage. Those gaps are what causes the issues that the market do not actually plan for. The products. Outside of that initial regulatory scheme or diagram, you have the product specifically. What kind of products do we have in our market? The kind of products we have in our market, of course we know that we still have a lot of room to create more products. But as of now, as of this day, the products we have in the market are equities, bonds, ETFs, commodities, derivatives, sukuk, and structured products. Are these enough? Are they deep enough for our market to grow the way we want it to grow? Or are they deep enough to take us to the next level? But besides that, the products that we have, do that make sense even to the investor? How will those products move the market to the next level or to where we expect the market to get into? When we compare this with other jurisdictions, what are the gaps that are available? The responsibility of actually developing the products is with the market itself. For the regulator, the responsibility of the regulator is to be able to provide rules and regulations that guide the operations of these products. It is not the responsibility of the regulator to actually develop products. It is the responsibility of the market and the market participants. The current regulatory framework in Nigeria is this. You have the regulatory framework with the laws guiding that regulation. There, the Investment and Securities Act, the SEC rules and regulation, the codes and guidelines and circulars issued by the SEC, and the rules of the SROs and trade groups and other related laws. Under the other related laws, we know about the CAMA, we know about the FRC Act, we know about the Bankruptcy Act, and of course, judicial decisions that guide decisions that are taken in the capital market. What are the objectives of regulation? The objectives of regulation are what is obtainable even in other jurisdictions, because the SEC is a signatory, a member of the IOSCO. Hence, the SEC must abide with the principles of regulation of IOSCO. The 38 principles of regulation of IOSCO are part of what makes regulation tick And that is what we have adopted even in this jurisdiction because we are part of IOSCO. So the objective of regulation, first and foremost, is investor protection. In everything that the SEC does, clearly, the first thing that comes to mind for every SEC staff or every SEC work is investors protection. Because without the investor, you cannot have a market. You probably will have participants, we will probably have stockbrokers and every other part of professional, every other kind of professional. But without investors, you won't have the market. And it is very important for us to be able to have more investors into the market. The investors must know that there's somebody behind. There's some rule, some regulation, some law that is effective. And that law that is effective must talk about investors' protection. The other thing we do is to ensure that the market is fair and efficient. Market is fair, efficient, and transparent. How do we do that? Because we do that via our oversight of the exchanges, via our oversight of all other market participants, via surveillance system, via rules and regulations that will make sure that whatever practice is happening in the market is that which is acceptable internationally. Reduction of systemic risk is part of the objectives of regulation. How do we reduce systemic risk? We need to make sure that the risk mitigants are available at every space in time in order that one particular risk does not spread into another situation to cause systemic risk. Because systemic risk will only come when you allow a risk that is existent in a particular sector or a particular area to move into another area and then catapult into the entire economy. Providing level playing field for the SEC. One of our primary goals is to make sure that everybody that operates in the market is dealt with fairly. And we provide level playing field by the issuance of rules and regulations. The rules and regulations that the SEC issues is clearly for everybody, and at every time we expect that everybody is comfortable with the rules that we issue from the SEC. There is no particular institution or participant that is favored, while we issue our rules and regulations. So, as much as possible, the rules and regulation, the Investment and Securities Act, will provide that level playing field for everybody, that there is nobody that will take an undue advantage take an undue advantage in regulation. The other part is to rid the market of all forms of malpractices. One of the key ways by which we'll do that is through enforcement. We make sure that anybody that has been involved in any form of malpractice in the market is properly sanctioned. It's properly sanctioned. And the rules have been provided to deal with that. To ensure market integrity. So that at every point in time, the investor will appreciate the essence of being part of the market. The rules and regulation, again, provide that succor for every investor to make sure that there is market integrity and that every participant in the market is able to see that and be part of it. Then, to the last year is promote international competitiveness in our market. How does our market play in the international community? Where do you place our market? Can we boast of being part of the international community in terms of capital market development? Can we raise our head up in the community of nations to say that our capital market is strong, our capital market is vibrant, and our capital market can stand the test of time? The role of the regulator in the market itself is very important outside the objectives of regulation. Provision of regulatory framework for new products. Each time a new product comes out, one of the responsibilities of the SEC is to go back, sit, and study what that product is. After the study of what that product is, the next thing we come up with are regulations to guide the issuance of that product, to guide investment in that product. So that is a very key function of the regulator. The other thing we do is promote competition through effective regulation. Everybody has a space in the Nigerian capital market. All we need to do is to be able to make sure that the rules that we set out are fair enough for everybody to participate in. Promoting capital market agenda to policymakers. One of the issues in Nigeria has always been the issue of mainstreaming the capital market into our national discourse. The SEC has a role to make sure that that happens. And that is why we have the Capital Market Master Plan and the Capital Market Master Plan Implementation Committee. The essence of that committee is to be able to provide an avenue that will enable the capital market, speak with government, introduce capital market issues into policy, and also introduce capital market issues into national discourse. The other thing we do as regulators is market surveillance. Market surveillance is, of course, synonymous with the market itself, because you need to be watchful, because as we speak, there are people in the capital market who desire to do something that is not supposed to be done. And for that reason, if they know that the surveillance of the market is weak, definitely they will take advantage. So our role as regulators is to make sure that there is adequate market surveillance on the market. Provision of enabling business environment. That is done in conjunction with government to make sure that the business environment is adequate, is good enough for anybody to operate in, and encouraging enough for anybody to want to come into. Promoting transparency and disclosure. Of course, disclosure is our hallmark in terms of regulation, especially now. It used to be merit regulation, but outside when that was cut off, we came into the disclosure regime. It means that for every market participant, you have a responsibility to disclose whatever you have a responsibility to disclose on whatever product that you are bringing into the market, the risk involved in that product, and how the investor is going to come out. The other thing is continuous review of regulations in line with international best practice and investor education, which is very, very important. The reason why the capital market is the way it is today and why it is not as buoyant as it should be is because the number of investors in the market are so few. If we speak of a population of over 180 million people, and we can hardly boast of 5 million investors in the Nigerian capital market, it means that we have a very, very tall order to fill. And that means that each and every one of us has a responsibility for investor education. The regulator will do its part, but it's important that everybody is aware that the issue of investor education falls to all of us. And lastly, is investor protection and enforcement. Investor protection and enforcement, like I said, is the heart of the capital market. If there's no investor protection and if there's no enforcement of all of the rules and regulations of the capital market, then the capital market cannot grow. Neither will anybody find a space of peace in the capital market to want to be part of.